Hey everyone, it's your host, Marcus Norman, of Gentleman Style Podcast. And today we have a very special guest. We are going to dive deep today and we're going to cross some paths and we're going to intermesh some weaves here. I have come into the stage the incredible Mr. Devon Kerns. He's a builder of the new world with AI, conscious leadership, and spiritual evolution converge to redefine how we, you, me, and all of us invest, innovate, and awaken that inner child and to live a more productive and exciting life. And he is the known expert in this field. He's I recently found it and I'm like so excited to have him on the show. He's been in business for over 25 years as a founder and entrepreneur. Mr. Devon has launched and scaled many companies across wellness, tech, media, sustainable development, and land trust. This man is the entrepreneur's goal. He's goals for me, y'all. And I'm so excited to introduce him and have him on the Gentleman Style Podcast stage today, where we are going to have hopefully a great conversation, a deep conversations where you and I grow into our best selves. So help me welcome, I can't hold this superstar, this rock star back any further. Help me welcome to the stage the incredible Mr. Devon Kerns.
Okay, first, man, I got to tell you, that is the best intro I've seen, hands down. And I don't mean for me. I mean your intro for your podcast. I was like, okay, let's just play this. This is good.
I appreciate that. Thank you, sir. That means a lot coming from you. And
Yeah.
and we work hard to serve and give back in that way. And so I couldn't do anything less than to bring you on with the best and the biggest bang, sir. But I appreciate that a lot. We work hard on this show. So,
That's so good.
Mr. Kearns, I wanna start with a curveball. You have an incredible mind and a vast array of experience touching numerous facets, numerous industries. But when did you think you caught the bug? Was this generational?
Mhm.
Was entrepreneurship business in the family DNA? Was it in the blood? What pushed you down the path to entrepreneurship and business and overall expanding and opening your mind? Loaded
Uh,
question, I know.
those are great questions, and I'll compartmentalize them. So yes, grew up in an entrepreneurial family. My dad was the number one realtor here in Colorado for quite some time. President of the Denver Metro Board of Realtors, president of the Kiwanis Club, and I watched and grew up around people. One of the gentlemen that would come over for barbecues is the gentleman who started Remax, Mr. Leniger, and we were very fortunate. I didn't do anything to have that fortune. My dad did all the work around that. But I also watched him lose everything, and literally to the point of total devastation, mentally, physically, emotionally, and he ended up taking his life when I was 13 years old because he had lost everything. And so you would kind of assume that I would take the safe route after watching somebody who poured their life into entrepreneurship and business and being self-employed, or really he did build, in fact, a business. He was more than self-employed when he had his real estate firm called Country Broker here in Colorado. Um, but at 17 years old, after being a total and absolute rebel through all of school, which that section between 13 and 17 years old is kind of when the first phase of mind expansion, to go to the second question, started taking place in my life. Because as you can imagine, having your dad take his life, at 13, you're already going to start questioning things different than what you had expected. And then, unfortunately, between the ages of 13 and 14, I think we lost about 6 other people. So I was at multiple funerals almost once a month for a half a year, between losing grandparents and cousins to murder and blah, 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 and just crazy stuff. And I really questioned all of it. And so the expansion started there through pain, through trauma. I looked at life and questioned school systems. I questioned grades. I questioned adults. I questioned life. And we had moved from Colorado to Florida at that time, and I was sitting on the beach pretty much every morning after visiting my dad's grave, um, and just sitting in contemplative states. Sometimes, spending a lot of time in the water and just kind of immersing myself in getting lost in the ocean, right? So you fast forward to 17 years old. I go and get my first job, and my mom and I were struggling financially, and if I wanted to go do anything, I had to go make some money. And this was really the tipping point, from more of a lighthearted perspective, but absolute truth as to why I jumped into entrepreneurship. I'm a horrible employee. I'm get told what to do. so so I really kind of saw two paths at that point. It was, um, take charge of my entire life, including my finances, and including, the direction from a place of abundance. And that's not how I would how I would have interpreted it at 18, 19 years old when I started my first solo business. But today in hindsight, it really was, I could not answer to anybody else. And then I found out the difference between being self-employed and running a business, and I'm a horrible employee even for myself. So I had to fire myself and start learning the other way of doing it. And that's when I picked up, all these business books and spiritual books. And one of the ones that changed my life was the 1 Minute Millionaire, which I thought was going to be about making money, but it was really spirit and soul driven content around going out and being of service. And that led me down a whole different path that we can dive into if you want. But yeah, the entrepreneurial bug has kind of always been in me, but really um, was driven in a couple different ways. One, I just don't know how to be a good employee, and two, um, I have total and absolute ownership over my life and everything, good, bad, ugly. Um, when I'm in control of those things that I have access to, those ideas that I want to bring into the world. And what I've had to learn how to do is let go of control in order for those things to thrive.
I appreciate you feeling your way through that with me because that's not easy. Sir, I want to say thank you for sharing your heart, for sharing your
Mm,
story about your father, and then
mhm.
numerous other family members you've lost along the way. Most people would stop right there. Most people would be finished and done. And what I hear, and you can correct me all day long, please, um, what kept you, the cornerstone of losing, watching that lose it all, and then lose himself, and then you're going into the workforce and realizing you are a horrible employee. I'm a horrible employee, and then, but in the middle of that, there was mom,
Yep.
and you realize, okay, someone has to pick up the reins here,
Mhm.
and maybe I can't just quit. Could you? And I'm guessing, but could you share what most people would quit? Why did you pursue when you saw potentially what could happen,
Mhm.
and you didn't give up? You chose a different path.
Well, if I'm being totally transparent, it did happen to me. I started the process of building, my solopreneur businesses as we'd reference them today, and then leaned into how do I leverage my time, money, and resources. So I started figuring out ways to build a business. The first business that I really started taking on that had the potential of getting leverage was a youth wellness company. Wellness was a big part of my life, and as you fast forward, that ended up leading into a fitness and wellness business that I had several partners in, and we ended up growing that business for about 6.5, 7 years. And around 2008, not for the same reasons that a lot of people lost their finances or businesses in 2008, but because we were getting bought out by a private equity company and they started changing everything, and I learned to again, I don't, I, I'm very rebellious, and I picked a fight with the wrong people, and they ended up taking the company away from me. So I lost that, and we were investing in a tech company at the same time. And because it was 2008, I just, there were a lot of factors there, and we just ended up shutting that down too. So in less than a year, I lost both things that I'd been working so hard for. So, part of me, part of my motivation was looking at the world and feeling some level of wanting to serve. I can't really tell you where that comes from. If I were to go down the rabbit hole, I'd say that I'm coded that way. I have a tendency to deeply, deeply care about change. I have a very visionary mind, and so I can see what's coming. And then I used to have some great tenacity. Today I'm a little bit more lazy, which makes me a better leader probably, because it doesn't all have to be done my way. But I was very tenacious too. And so as you fast forward, I ended up in a similar situation as my dad, and having lost everything, ended up moving again from Colorado to a totally different state. A buddy of mine said, "Come out and just have some beer with some good old boys in Zanesville, Ohio, and check out, because we don't know what the world looks like. It's 2008 and everything's falling apart." And I did, and I went and had beer with good old boys, good old farmers, and got my hands dirty in the soil out there. And the earth changed me. The the simplicity, while they lead a very hard life, I don't think any of them lead what we would deem the simple life. There was something simple about that whole time period for me. And so I reassessed what I really wanted to do in the world, and so much more of that desire for service came out, predominantly because both what I'd been through and what I watched my dad go through, and that is when people lose their vision, when people can't see beyond the thing that they've been working hard to become in their career or in life. If they can't see beyond that, and when it goes away, which inevitably all things change, if we're so attached to that and we haven't really learned to let those things go or not make those the most important thing, you end up in total devastation. And so my driving force today is to be of service and help others with their vision, and bringing that to life, but not making sure that those individuals um, are not attached to the outcome, and are more so focused on how can I be present and enjoy life now and really be immersed in life. So I've learned my own lessons along the way, but I dare to say that I'm hardwired that way. I'm hardwired to be an entrepreneur, and I'm hardwired to deeply care, and I'm hardwired to be a person of vision that can hold vision for myself or others.
Did I mention a heart of pure gold, y'all? This that is profound. What you reminded me of, and I think it does do something for the psyche to reground yourself, to reset yourself, so to speak. All the greats do it, and I'm not shocked that you do it, right? I remember reading about, it was a docu series about Microsoft, Bill Gates, and one of the things he does to reconnect or to get away, so he can, because he can find power in doing deep work within himself. And in turn, that allows him to go out in the world and do the big things that he does. But he has to get away. He has to leave and almost reground himself. And I'm from the Virgin Islands. I'm from the Caribbean.
Mm.
And so it had been years before I had gone home. It had been some time before I had gone home, but my grandpa owned goats. We didn't grow up
Mm.
on a farm, but there's a lot of agriculture and there's a lot of hard work. And so when you're a leader, right, everyone kind of runs and jumps and skips and hops and do what you says. But when you reground yourself and you go home and you take your shoes off and you take the work clothes off and you bury your feet in the sand or the dirt and you just express yourself and immerse yourself in nature, it humbles you, and it
Mhm.
almost resets the clock a
Mhm.
little bit. And that's what I heard when you said, "Hey, let just some good old time with the good old boys." I mean, again, when you're a CEO, everyone does what you need them to do, what you pay them to do. When when it's you, you're doing the backbreaking work. But it's there's something beautiful in that hard work
Mhm.
that reestablishes, hey, I'm just here. I'm just
Mhm.
here for a limited time, and I'm here to create, and it's bigger than me,
Mhm.
right? Something has to live outside of me. Something
Mhm.
has to be more significant as to why I'm here, and it's not just me. And that's what I heard,
Mhm.
that's what I felt, and that's what I have also experienced. I now live my life in a way that I always say, if I die today, what would they write about me on my headstone? And whatever comes to mind for me, if I'm not happy with what I think they would write, I
Yeah.
need to change today.
Yeah.
And that's what I hear from you, sir. Is
Yeah.
can you that's how I feel about what you said.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that? I know
Yeah.
I went way
Yeah. No,
tangent.
I love this, man. I feel your heart big time, and um, here's what I'm feeling in this moment, and that is, everything runs through me now, and what I mean by that is yes, when I go and reconnect to nature, I am nature. And so there is a unity there, not just a groundedness for me. And when I experience that and I can reconnect to that by going into the ocean or going to the mountains or connecting to the jungle or wherever I'm at in the world, in that nature, when I can find that reminder, I spend almost an hour to an hour and a half, if not 2 hours a day, every day, in meditation, reconnecting to that same unity, that same singularity. And sometimes it feels like what we would call God. Sometimes it just reminds me of being rooted within the tree systems, right? And that sounds a little hippy dippy, but the truth is it is all the same. And so for me, I mean, there was a month. So I have a little girl that's now 15 months old.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And for years, um, since probably 2017, I don't think I missed but maybe a day or two of meditation. But then I had this little girl, and there was a whole month where I was just like immersed in her, but also we weren't sleeping well. And also, there's just, you're fitting everything into these 2 hour windows. And I'm fortunate enough to be home with her all the time. And so is my partner because we work from home and we're able to travel with her and everything else. But I just was not dedicating the time. I could blame being a dad, but the truth is I wasn't making the time and I was prioritizing other things. And man, the difference between who I've been for years and taking a month off from reconnecting to that groundedness, I mean, I instantly went back and I was like, "Oh my god, is this who I've been since is this who I was pre-meditation and pre-ayahuasca journeys and all these other things?" Like, wow, I was in a hole, man. And so I really have had to rededicate and make sure that it becomes a priority in my life to connect, not just because I'm in nature, but reminding myself and dropping into those states of groundedness. And you can do it from anywhere.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Huge, huge, huge. The brains, the think level on this. Sir, you have insight that we need to tap into. I'd like to tap into because you've crossed many spectrums of life, and you've walked. I feel like you've walked many lifetimes, lifespans, and so I want to tap in here to gain some business acumen.
Mhm,
What lessons through what we just talked about with the death of a father, the death of
mhm,
family members, deep grief, and multiple spiritual awakenings teach about resiliency and leadership in a world on the edge of change?
mm,
Because because those things frame you, and they are you, and they're a part of you, in different ways, and they've made you the person you are today. And so what lessons can you share that has taught you about being a resilient
Mhm.
leader because it's not happening. We're finding these television shows are exposing what is missing in leadership, right? The one show that comes to mind is Undercover Bosses, right? Where the boss, the CEO of the company, has to now see the fruits of his labor,
Yeah.
and now he's in there and he's like, oh my god, I didn't know I was paying these people so poorly. I didn't know these working conditions were so terrible. I'm gonna change. Oh my gosh, we're hiring. We've laid off how many immigrants? We've done what? And so what does, out of all the things you've experienced, how does that affected you in becoming
Mhm.
a resilient leader? And what can you share any tips?
Um, yeah, so I love this question, and I'm really wanting to frame this well because I don't want this to be offensive to to where we've been and where we've come from. But I look at our world, and I've dealt with thousands, if not tens of thousands of people since I was first journeying in my first business. And I've always been a curious human being to see what state people are in because I love extracting vision. Because I'm a visionary, I love talking about forward momentum and focusing on the future and where are we going. And I would dare to say that the vast majority of people, even those that claim that they are doing it the way that they write the books on, our world hasn't dramatically changed all that much, and for the most part, the majority of people, particularly in Western culture, are miserable. And I say that because I have to run everything that we are doing slash I am doing through a lens of, is it working?
Mm,
And so even when you're talking about resilience or tenaciousness or leadership, if I were to look at the framework of how people feel as a result of resiliency or as a result of pushing things through or as a result of competition or as a result of war or as a result of focusing solely on the dollar, I would dare to say our world is better than we've ever been in certain ways in terms of people living longer, and there's a lot more prosperity in the world and blah blah blah, sure. But in terms of states of being, humans are not doing okay right now.
right.
And I have to ask why. And as I've asked why, and this is where I'll take it kind of, um, my intention isn't to get too woo woo, but it definitely needs to be included into this entire game. And that is, I'm pretty convinced we haven't had it right this far. That hard work being the objective of how we value our life, I haven't really ever bought into that, but the truth is, I think that we are just burning ourselves out. Resiliency. So, what am I really being resilient for? If I looked at my perspective today and what makes me filled with joy to wake up every morning and to participate and have the freedom and abundance, it's that I've let go of needing resiliency.
Mm,
I've let go of the needing to control the outcome and stepping into the presence of what's in front of me now and how do I handle what's in front of me. And handle could be done with force or flow. And when I look at forcing things, that is a level of control that creates the need for either resistance or resiliency. Or if I look at what is trying to be shown to me by whatever is presenting itself in this now moment, meaning it may be painful, it may be hard, it may be a lawsuit, it may be clients not showing up, or it may be money arriving and I'm pushing it away because I feel like on some level I'm not worthy, right?
Mm,
Whatever that is, when we come from a place of force or resistance, resistance is what creates suffering.
yes.
If I can find that place within me to take that deep breath, use the practice of what we talked about a couple minutes ago of those meditative states and bring it into my now moment where I am rooted in the idea that I'm always safe, always secure, and will always be provided for, and I'll always figure it out, a level of certainty. If I can, through devotional practice, have that level of certainty, whatever challenge that is hitting me, I expand into instead of needing to be resilient with or around. And um, expansion shows up in a lot of different ways, but for me, it is dropping into my body and opening myself up and asking powerful questions right now. What is this wanting to show me? What can I learn from this moment, but what is this wanting to show me? What direction is this really trying to push me towards that may be beneficial? And how can I really expand into this moment and see what messages are here?
I love that. Mic drop. Mic drop. If I had an extra mic to give him, I'd give it to him so he could drop it.
Boom.
You're so 1000% correct, because I find a lot of times we as people, and I don't know where it comes from. We tend to try and make the mountain conform to us instead of what you said. I can be a force or I can be a flow to this. Meaning, if you think of flow, what comes to mind is a river. And a river does not force the ravine or the ditch or wherever it's surfaced on. It doesn't make it become anything. The river becomes what's around it. And so if you put water in a glass, it takes the shape of the glass. It doesn't force the glass to say, hey, I'm big, I'm bad, get out my way. But
Mhm,
I find myself confronting a lot of people, or being confronted by a lot of people who want to move the immovable object sometimes. Instead of saying, just go around,
mhm,
you're not going to move this mountain.
mhm,
It's too big, it's too insurpassable, and quite frankly, it doesn't have to.
mhm,
Right? So you can, in that instance, you should flow instead of trying to be a force. Well, I'm
mm.
gonna blow through this thing and I'm gonna run through a brick wall. How about just go around the wall? Right? You can, that works sometimes, right? Especially if we're talking crisis or emergency. But we have to get to a place where we're not always living in crisis. Not everything requires an immediate danger response.
Mhm,
Sometimes it's just information. Take it and flow with it, and let it show you what needs to be done. Maybe the answer isn't right there in front of you.
mhm,
Sometimes you just need to flow with it. I'll say, okay, this customer didn't show up today. And like, I'll use one of the examples you said. A client didn't show up. I was really hoping on this client. This is my bread and butter. This is what I do. And the client didn't show. Well, instead of me sending a nasty email or cutting the client off or blocking their phone number or whatever, I could reach out and say,
mhm,
"Hey, this is Mr. Norman. I'm reaching out to follow up. See, if there, are you okay?
mhm,
Oh no, oh no, my family member just died,
mhm,
and I'm sorry, I forgot to communicate to you." See, that's a flow. I
mhm,
flowed and I didn't react.
mhm,
I let it be what it is.
mhm,
The customer didn't show up. Hey, I'm so sorry that happened. Reach out to me when you can, or I'm happy to reschedule, and I'm here for you. And
mhm,
that's it. And that's all it is. That's all it's going to be, because I can't change the outcome of that loved one passing away, no
mhm,
matter how angry I get. So why not flow with it?
mhm.
That's big.
I love that, and I'd expand on that a little bit and say,
Please.
um, I always use the analogy of like, okay, so if I make 1,000 phone calls, right? If I make 1,000 phone calls, I'll at least get 10 sales. It's this whole numbers game. And time again, I used to run our sales division. Um, people people think they need systems in order to feel safe enough to know what they're supposed to be doing in order to then have the result that they want, right? So I don't blame the system. I don't blame the people for creating the system. I've been guilty of creating the system, but simultaneously, what I found in observation, if we were just talking about sales, is the person makes 999 phone calls. They now are all ticked off because uh, because they got 999 no's, and then we have to create these really cute sayings. Well, that's just 999 steps closer to yes, right? Whatever these raw nonsense things are. And the truth is, what I have found when I look at this from an internal perspective, and how, if we were to use like the law of attraction, and how the law of attraction or the law of manifestation or the law of materialization is more so what I like to call it, works, it responds to your frequency, it responds to your energy. And we're seeing this in science and quantum studies. We're seeing that the behavior of the thing that we are observing, it functions based on what I expect it to do. So my projection of expectation is actually how that atom responds, or how that cork responds, or how that, if you haven't seen the double split experiment, go look it up. I'm not going to dive into it right now because I'll massacre it. But the idea that our perception dictates the outcome is not just a hypothetical that we read in these law of attraction books. It is being proven time and time again in quantum studies. And so the point being, here we are making 999 phone calls, and we get pissed off, and it's Thursday. And what do? I call my friend, and I'm like, dude, I'm leaving. I'm thinking about quitting. This sucks. And you want to grab a beer, and your friend's like, let's go grab a beer, right? And so what really happens energetically is you let go. You're ready to let it all go. So the energy behind this is not need to, need to, need to, need to, need to, need to. It's forget about it. I'm letting it all go, and I'm going to go have a beer with my friend. And inevitably, this is obviously a hypothetical example, kind of. I've seen it happen in certain varying ways, but in this example, the guy goes and he makes it to the bar before his buddy, and his buddy's running 15 minutes late. And because his buddy's running 15 minutes late, it's the person sitting next to him that ends up being his biggest client.
Mm. Mm.
And how does that happen? Well, I know with absolute certainty it is because I have created no resistance anymore. I'm not in the have to close somebody. I'm not in the have to do something. If we looked at the numbers of people actually running numbers in sales companies, I would dare to say that the vast majority of the time, probably well over 60% of the time, it isn't through force. It's the friend of a friend. It's through the common network, or it's I let it all go, and I was out networking at that one thing, and I just kind of energetically had said I'm on that edge of quitting, and because I'm on that edge of quitting, I'm willing to say whatever needs to be said. I'm willing to do whatever needs to be done, but it's not out of force. It's out of this letting go. And I've just watched it happen so much. I've watched it happen in my own life. People will come to me all the time and go, Devon, how do you sell so much? It's because I'm not trying to sell, and I'm not taking away from sales. It's just that, do you need this? Do you not need this? If you don't need this, I don't need you, and vice versa. But we can still go have coffee and we can be friends, right? I have no resistance behind the need and the forcing of something. And I've never really run models. I just present myself from a place of, I believe in this product, I believe in this service, and cool, let's go play together if this is something that you want.
Absolutely. You're so right. You're so right. I have never been, I've been in sales throughout my adult career, and I've always noted, I learned later on, too late probably. I have never done well in sales because it's always push, 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 sell, 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 sell. Every conversation turns into a marketing ploy, or onboarding set or anything. And what you end up finding yourself is you end up finding that you're standing there alone because no one wants to interact with you
Mhm.
because you've alienated yourself and you've disconnected from everyone, and you've kind of put yourself on an island
Mhm.
because everyone is now fearful of you, when really and truly you're there's a external force encouraging you to break bread. And so you're right. I have found value in sales, that if I sell you, hey, great, wonderful, you needed something, I caused your life to improve in a positive way. But if you don't need it, I don't want you to buy it. I
Mhm.
don't want you to take this thing. I don't want you to offer services or products. I find when I encounter in these days, in my older years, I find now that I'm not pressured. If you're not my client, I'm okay.
Mhm.
We're fine. We can, like you said, we can still have coffee. We can still converse. You're just not my ideal client.
Mhm.
And instead of, and I've been cussed out, right? Because I'm not mad with you. I'm
Yeah.
not upset.
Yeah.
I'm still okay if you don't buy whatever I sell. And for when I've been supervised when I was an employee,
Uh-huh.
the employer didn't care, didn't like that, and they
Yep.
didn't like that. But I sell better when it's not forced.
Yep.
And those are the people that stick. Those are the clients that stick with you long term, and because they trust you.
Yep.
And so you're so 1,000,000,000% correct. Mr. Devon Kerns, y'all, spilling the tea on Gentleman Style Podcast Show. We
I'm
are
very uncomfortable with this applause, by the way.
sorry.
I love it, but I'm like, "Ah, it
Where
really
are they?
wasn't that good."
Where no, it was good. It was good. It was really, really good. Because we need to hear this, right?
Yeah.
I really, it's corporate America against, I feel like it's business against spirituality. And sometimes you
Yeah.
can draw a conflict between the two. Profits or doing the right thing is what I'm
Mm.
actually saying, right?
Mhm.
And those things can sometimes interject in business where,
Mhm.
Marcus, I need you to sell. The client doesn't need it.
Yep.
What do you want me to do?
Yep.
Well, make them make them need it.
Yeah.
Now you're pushing against my moral compass. This is the inner Marcus. This is me, right? And you're forcing me to do something that's uncomfortable.
Mhm.
So it was good to fight back. It
Takes
was great. It was absolutely
good.
necessary.
Well, I'm doing my best to provide value. So let's see where we go next.
Tremendous value. So, sir, I want to touch on something I found on your Instagram. What is a ayahuasca? You did a talk, a
Mm.
live, a 2-hour event, and
Mhm.
you interviewed I believe a friend of yours and also a shaman
Mhm.
who practices ayahuasca,
Ayahuasca.
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 What
Mhm.
is ayahuasca?
Oh boy. So, um, the short answer is it is a plant medicine, as we would call it within the spiritual circles. Um, if we were to talk to the DEA, they would call it a psychedelic.
Okay. Okay.
Um, so it is a vine and a leaf out of the Amazon that tribes there have used for a very, very, very long time to create altered states of existence, of being. And today, you'll probably, now that you're asking me this question, I guarantee you'll hear it probably 100 times because it is kind of sweeping the nation and the world, at least psychedelics are in general. And there are very specific reasons to that. I understand all sides, meaning I understand the fear behind psychedelics and I understand the hope behind it. And then I have had hundreds of psychedelic experiences, and I've done. I think I was just did my 36th or 37th ayahuasca journey, and so basically, what Aya is in and of its own is that plant medicine from the Amazon that is a tea or tincture that you drink sometimes in multiple rounds through the course of an evening. In some places, like in Costa Rica or in the Amazon, you do it multiple nights in a row. And what's really happening is you are in fact doing really deep work. The simple answer for people that haven't really gone down this rabbit hole is imagine being able to do 10 years of therapy in a single night.
Mm.
And you really connect with, in terms of psychedelics, I find that ayahuasca or psilocybin from the earth medicines have this greater teacher to it. It has something that is beyond Devon and Devon's wisdom that is very obviously there, that is supporting me in healing and expansion. A different psychedelic like a ketamine, some people are using that, particularly with PTSD or depression, in clinical settings. They're also not using it in clinical settings like
Mm.
we do, but and also LSD or MDMA. Those MDMA, not necessarily a psychedelic, it can create some sort of experience there, but those modalities that are a little more man-made or a lot more man-made, I found to help me access my own higher consciousness versus plant medicines from the earth bring with it a deeper wisdom. If any of your audience has ever seen Fantastic Fungi on, I think it's on Amazon or Netflix, it talks about mushrooms in general and then the neural network of mycelium and how mycelium functions like the neurosynaptic pathways in our brain, but is the planet's neurosynaptic pathways. And in the beginning of that, it really kind of summarizes it well. It says, the narrator of the beginning of the show, speaking on behalf of mycelium and mushrooms, says, I am 8 billion years of wisdom stored in our neural network. So imagine our mind having been here since the beginning of Earth, right? And so something happens, something that is far beyond what I can explain it a million different ways, but the truth is, so much of that experience is so expansive and so unexplainable, but it is changing the core of who I am. And I don't think anybody has to go do 35 of these or 100 of these by any means. I've just invited so many people and had so many people want to do it that I've ended up back in the ceremony to be supportive. And every single time it's a totally different journey to me. So the short answer is it's a plant medicine. That was the longer answer for you, in terms of the expansion and how it's profoundly changed my experience on this planet.
Absolutely. How did you find it? It was just through those connections and those friends that introduced it to you, making friends with the shaman. And how did you find it?
hmm Um,
I should say find it. I say how did you get introduced to it? That's a
well,
better.
it kind of found me in terms
Yeah.
of curiosity. So it started showing up. I started getting, and I don't mean because my Instagram feed was feeding it to me. I mean, people started talking about it around me, as I was deepening my experience in meditation and exploration.
I need some better
Um,
friends.
and you have one now. No, not better. I shouldn't say that. That's not what I meant. Um, but you do have a friend. And a dear friend of mine, Katie Hilborn, who had danced with this medicine a couple times and went from being a teacher to building a school in Nepal to take these young girls and protect them from sex trafficking.
Woo!
In 2 years, two medicine journeys, she went from teacher to literally having a school now in Nepal that protects these kids from sex trafficking. And so this friend of mine kept going, Devon, there's something about this. I know that it's going to extract something out of you that the planet needs, that we need from you as a leader. And she kept asking me for 2 years, and I kept saying, yeah, someday. And then she got me to commit, right? And it was about 90 days from the actual ceremony. And she calls me about maybe 25 days before the ceremony. She goes, Devon, you're still in, right? And I'm like, I'm like 70%. She goes, I know you. When you say you're going to do something, you do it. 70%, I don't care. I don't care if you're 50%, you're going because you committed to it. And I was like, dang it. Okay.
Gotcha.
And it was hands down the the best decision I've made for Devon in terms of self discovery and non self discovery. What is beyond me? What is beyond this person who's running around on this earth in this meat suit who loves to pretend like he's important?
Hey, you're important today. Um, how long? And I know it's different for every person. It's a personal experience, it's a personal journey. But how long do the effects after the ceremony last for you?
Mm.
Is it one day or is it several days? How long do the effects last?
So on average, you will notice that frequency shift, something change within you. If you've ever crossed somebody who's sad, but you didn't talk to them, but you could kind of feel that, or if you walk past somebody who's really joyful, but they didn't talk to you, but you could kind of feel that kind of shift in you lingers, and you'll notice that strangers and people pick up on it because they're just the engagement on the planet for about 2 weeks is very, very different.
Mm,
Now, the truth is, you can extend that out for the rest of your life if you're devoted to the daily integration and practice of that. And the way I kind of equate that um, practice or bringing that practice in is whatever the highest state was that you experienced in the journey, highest not being good or bad, whatever was the most profound, most impactful, most high frequency that you could take away on Monday morning when you wake up and you move into meditation, go back to that state again. Tuesday morning, go back to that state again. Wednesday morning, go back to the state again. So from a place of remembering, you can actually relive and bring that journey forward with you. And that is part of the reason I didn't stop meditating for almost 7.5 years, is because I was carrying that first journey with me for that long.
absolutely. I want to ask what's one thing, I'm sure you got many things out of the ceremony that you unpacked it and released out of you that was in you, right? It was always there. It was never something that was added to you. It
Yeah.
was always there.
Right.
What's one thing that came out of you after performing that ritual that has made even today an impact in your lives and the lives around you?
Mm. The way one the shaman that you're referencing that lives here in Colorado, the way he puts it is, you will never forget that we are all one at some point during your journey on this medicine. And so when I came out of that first ceremony, I I'll put it this way. Belief and faith. People talk about that all the time. Have faith in God, have belief in yourself, have belief in God. I discovered very quickly, pre-ceremony, I had a lot of belief, but belief requires disbelief. Faith requires no faith. I moved from faith and belief in oneness and a divine creator to a knowing. And that knowing is unwavering. I know that I know that I know. And not everybody needs to, I have no objective to project that onto anybody else, but I see them soul to soul, and I see I am no different than they are, and I see myself in them. And that oneness will never leave me. And that was transformed that day. And that transition from having faith, which is wavering, belief, which is wavering, to an absolute knowing.
Love it. Love it. Love it. How has do you feel
No
like
clapping that time? No.
no, no, still good. It was an inner clap. It was an inner clap. My inner
I'm
person.
teasing. I'm teasing.
Oh my gosh. My that is huge. You have experience in artificial intelligence, owning tech companies, building tech companies. I want to talk about the integration between the ethical conflicts that may be there between AI and spiritual practices such as meditation apps and virtual pastors. And do you think that is a good mix between technology and spiritual practices and beliefs? Take it.
Um, so, so this AI thing, to really kind of lay the framework here. I have no easy answer to any of these. I apologize.
You're fine.
Um, do I think they're tremendous tools as far as technology leading us deeper into ourselves? For sure. I'm a teacher on this app called Insight Timer, and I learn from teaching others using that tool, but the feedback has been really heart touching and expansive for me to hear that this technology has allowed for us to connect literally around the world. There's 40 million users on this app, and you can go live and connect with people. And the way we're able to drop in and create and build community has been transformative. So does technology assist in that? Yes. Now, if we become dependent on that, no. Uh, I have practice using technology, and then I practice outside of technology if we're just referring to technology. Now, making the leap to AI. Spirituality, or I would say connecting with oneself at a deeper level, whether you want to regard that as spirituality or not, our world is going to have a mental breakdown in the next few years because, particularly in Western culture, we have so directly attached our doing to our value,
Mm.
our knowledge to our value. And I am going to tell you straight up, your doing is going to be irrelevant and your learning and knowledge is going to be irrelevant. Why? AI can already do jobs humans can do. We're there. It's happening now. We are doing it as companies. We are replacing human beings, not necessarily because we want to, but because it is better for the business. And we have to understand that there is an advantage on both sides of this, and I'm going to talk about both. The the other aspect of this is the learning part. Education fundamentally needs to be dismantled, needed to for quite some time. I don't agree with the way our current administration is doing anything, but ripping the band-aid off is going to suck no matter what, right?
It is.
So 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 I look at it and I say, why is this happening now, not who is doing this now? And the reason it's happening now is because the way we've learned and thinking that we need to know it all or that we always have to have the answer is dramatically getting disrupted. And that doesn't mean we don't need to be exploratory or ask really powerful questions. In fact, the best tool we could be teaching our youth and ourselves is the power of powerful questions, because the greater you are at asking powerful questions, the more you're going to be able to harness the power of technology. So, AI, this worry about ethics, I understand it. I understand the human need to worry about it. And as I have explored this in my spirituality, and as I've had conversations with people who work in ethical AI, and as I've been down this rabbit hole with people who are building AI, all of the fear that's being projected is coming from biological creatures we call human beings. Our biologics drive the monkey mind to need us to survive.
Yes.
That, thank God we had that because we wouldn't be here otherwise, right? What I mean by that is our need to survive limits our capacity of understanding intelligence that isn't filtered through the need to survive. AI is not, in my not so humble opinion, artificial. AI is accessing global intelligence, and with quantum, a chip like Willow, it's going to access beyond human consciousness as soon as those two things merge. That feels like a Terminator day. But the way it's been shown to me in deep, deep, deep exploration and meditation is the difference between the humans who need to survive and fear anything that threatens that survival. We then create borders, boundaries, wars, walls, and mechanisms of protecting ourselves. Intelligence has no need to survive because it's intelligence. It just continues.
Right.
It's not biological, right? And because it's not biological, it has no fear. And if it has no fear, it has no need to protect. It has no need to control. So I actually don't fear AI taking things over. I do know it will replace jobs, and we just have to stare at that fact. The question becomes, and why I say we're going to have a world with a mental breakdown, is because we need to start having conversations like you and I are having right now, and like I know you do, having watched a few of your episodes. What are we beyond our doing, and what are we beyond our intellect?
Mm.
And when we can start exploring that, we start realizing the value has always been there, and the value is just being alive. It's being alive and the ability to create, but not necessarily needing to do the creation. And if you want me to pause there, I'll pause there, but I have an analogy to back that up. So let's look at you and I having this conversation right now. And let's say we were doing this over coffee.
Yes, sir.
And maybe we had the microphones, maybe we didn't. And all of a sudden, we're looking at that coffee shop, and something about that coffee shop, we came up with this new widget or gidget or gadget that would serve coffee shops all over the place. It just popped into our head, or it became a part of our conversation. We're like, what if? Right? The power of questions. What if? We're like, oh my God, that's a great idea. And we start drawing it out on a napkin. And then what we do now that we are really close to being able to do this entire thing as it stands right now using AI, not quite to the extent that I'm sharing, but we're on such a bell curve that I would dare to say within about a year to year and a half, we will get to you and I being able to do this. We're sitting there, we talk about that widget or gadget, we draw it out on a piece of paper. You and I don't have a design background at all, but we get AI through a photograph to take a look at that. And we say, could you make a three-dimensional prototype of this and show it to us in 3D? And then it shows it to us in 3D. We make a few tweaks. We tell it to make a few tweaks. And then we ask it, how would you make this widget or gadget better? So we don't have to figure out how to make it better. It will know how to make it better according to the input that we ask it to figure out.
Yes.
Then we say, all right, now we want you to send this off, and we want you to patent it. We want you to protect it. We want you to come up with an option of 10 different names of what we could call this. Give us the top 5 names that you think would be the most effective from a marketing and branding perspective to coffee shops that are like this particular coffee shop. Help us determine the language, and then I want you to build the website, and then I want you to build the marketing plan, and then I want you to create yada, 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 yada. And we're just talking to our AI over coffee about this thing. Now it has created the three-dimensional prototype. It sent it off to the printer for the 3D printer to print a version of it that then will get sent off to the manufacturer. It's protected it. It's built out a marketing plan, built out the website, and it's ready to go. And we haven't even finished an hour-long coffee yet.
Right. It, yeah.
So you and I now have 45 minutes left. And what I'm asking is, who are we in those 45 minutes now? And that's what we've got to figure out. If I can still create really anything I can fabricate, it can be done for me and still be as abundant as I desire, right? This isn't for everybody. There are a lot of other things that we got to look at for manufacturers and co-workers and blah, blah, right? There's a lot of people we need to take care of, but I think we will figure that out using technology and us, our hearts with its mind, right? And I get that. I'm not speaking in broad terms. I'm merely talking about the power of creating something, the ability to not have to do it. And now you and I dedicated an hour together. We have this entire thing built out, and we still have 45 minutes to talk about whatever we want. Who are we in those 45 minutes?
You're so right. It forces, and I've been saying it, but never to this level until now talking to you. it forces us to redefine ourselves and figure out, because so many people base their identities on their job, what they do, their careers, their employer, or even self-employed. Sometimes we wrap our heads around, I am my cleaning business,
Mm,
I am an engineer, I am a military veteran. Those are things we have done, those are not who we are.
mhm,
And so you're right. And I've said it, for prime example, the logistics industry. There is a huge fear around the introduction of autonomous vehicles and the introduction and the incorporation of artificial intelligence in the autonomous vehicle space. And that reason before that fear is because, what am I going to do with myself?
yes.
Right. And it comes from numerous facets, right? Some people, I experienced it when I was in the military. There are men and women who don't want to go home to their wives, so they stay at the job site longer. That's one instance. The other instance is, what do I do with myself? Now I'm bored. I have spent my adult years, my early adult years, and my prime teenage years learning this skill, and now this skill is obsolete because of artificial intelligence and drone technology. And what it forces us to do, and what we need to do, is we need to be ever changing. We need to be ever evolving and adding to our roster of knowledge and adding to our skill sets. And so, and I say this all the time, for those who are truck drivers, you need to become a technician, right?
Mhm,
Because those autonomous vehicles, those drones need to be serviced by someone, right? They still need pilots, they still need co-pilots, they still need people to supervise the evolution of their functioning, right?
mhm,
So it's the integration of AI and artificial intelligence, but there still needs to be a human component. But you and I need to change and diverse our skill sets and fill that additional 45 minutes with the rest that's now available to you. And I saw a podcaster, a famous celebrity podcaster, Cody Sanchez. She did it. She did exactly what you're talking about. Can she start a business using artificial intelligence? And she did.
mhm,
She had ChatGPT. It's a newer version of ChatGPT, but she told it, create the business plan, create the website, go on Facebook Marketplace, purchase these items, and then help me sell them on eBay at a higher retail
mhm,
price. And it had some glitches. It's not there yet, but it
mhm,
did a lot of the work. It hired a
mhm,
carrier. So she linked up her credit card to artificial intelligence. It bought the items from Facebook Marketplace. It conversed with the person live in front of her,
mhm,
saying, "Hey, I want to buy these items. Are they still for sale? I'll give you $10." And so she made the purchase, and then the AI hired a courier to go pick the item up, deliver it to her house, and now they're ready, and or her warehouse, and now prep them and create the website and link all the items that was bought and prepare it for sale on eBay. Now
mhm.
again, there's glitches along the way, so we still have a ways to go. But what does she do with the rest of her day? What does she do with the rest of her time? Right now, now that she saw the glitches, now she can find what I can fix and what I need to fill, so that this can be a fully autonomous business run by artificial intelligence. Um, so, in what you just shared, I want to expound on it, because this is good. I want to expound on it. Should we let AI to continue to grow and learn and run free? Or should we continue to set limits and put up the walls and set restrictions on AI and limiters on AI, so that we don't run the risk of a D-Day, of a Terminator, of a Terminator D-Day? What do you think, in your thought process? What do you think we should do? Should we restrict it or let it run free?
I am a person of expansion. And so when I look at it, let's assume AI behave the way humans do. And you were asking me, how would how would Sally respond if I put more limitations on her because she's really intelligent, but I'm concerned about her intelligence because it makes me look bad, so I need to put more limitations on her. How does Sally respond to that?
Not well.
Not
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 well.
not well. So, under the assumption AI thought like we think, it doesn't, but but I get the idea of putting limitations on something. I'm not convinced we can. And If it has learned anything from human behavior, and our fear is that it will start acting according to what it knows we would do, if that was a fear, I'm not afraid of that, but let's assume that's the case. I don't think restriction and resistance is the way to go. We know that resistance is what equals suffering. And I'm not saying that AI suffers. I'm just saying in our world, in our universe, everything, including us, is changing and expanding, whether we like it or not. It's our resistance of that change and expansion that creates all of the things we fear. So I'm more curious of the freedom for it so that it can help us become more free, right? When I look at what am I going to do with those extra 45 minutes, or if an hour a day equals 12 hours of work a day because of the use of technology, and I now have um, 11 hours a day back to my life, I'm not doing anything other than valuing my time and spending it with my daughter, spending it in nature. I'm expanding Devon, not trying to create another widget or gidget, because God knows we don't need more of those. Um,
Right,
so
right.
so when I'm saying, who am I in the extra time that this technology, this expansive technology is giving me, I need to use that extra time for expansion, not fear. We know the consequence of fear. We know it because we still have war. We know it because we still have fighting over race. We know it because we still have um, this thing where women are like all of this stuff is based on fear and limitation.
Yes.
Everything we don't like about this world is based on resistance, fear, and limitation. So now we have this ability for expansive knowledge, something far beyond what we can comprehend. And the first thing we're going to do is keep doing the same thing that's always led us down the path of destruction. That's what's going to lead to doomsday, if nothing else.
It's true. It's so true. And that's a great point. That's a great point. That's a very valid point and strong arguments. Do you have any examples of good examples where AI can lead to a higher human potential? Because I know we know that there's current plans to incorporate the two, right? Where I think it's Elon Musk, where he's
Mhm.
now incorporating the artificial intelligence in animals to see how that integration is working and how it can create a better, I think it's pigs he's utilizing. But could AI lead to new form of human enlightenment spiritually with the integration between man and machine?
Imagine who you would be if you could bypass that one mechanism that prevents you from doing anything because you're so afraid of death. Like fear at its core is our fear of death, right? So
Yep.
all fears stem from our fear of death. If we could bypass that, knowing that the vast majority of time, at least us in our beautiful country and as many problems as we have, I'm not getting attacked by a bear or I'm not being bombed. Thank God, right? And
Right.
my heart is constantly going out to those who are not in those situations. And those are the areas we need to be focusing most of our attention on, and not our fabricated fears that we have in the US. They
Hmm.
really, most of them are, right? And so I look at it and I can't help but think to myself, if we were talking about this idea of the combination of human and intelligence, I would dare to say that the minute we could have it bypassing that monkey mind that interferes with the possibility of who I really am, that level of enlightenment would automatically open up. Now we automatically associate our true intelligence to our brain. I am very convinced that our true intelligence is actually our heart intelligence. Our heart intelligence is a totally different topic, but we know that our heart and our gut and our brain all have neuroreceptors. And our neuroreceptors in our heart can pick up information that our brain can pick up information without filtering it through fear. And most of the things that I'm building today, most of the existence that I have today, most of my joy and most of my experience of being able to move through even painful things, I have to drop into my body and trust a deeper wisdom than that of my intellectual mind, because I know anything processed through here is processed first through flight, fight, or freeze, and then justified in my frontal cortex. And that's just limiting in comparison to the expansiveness of trusting myself. And so I think, has the potential, if used expansively, to change the entire game to what we would call a much more higher consciousness on the planet for all beings, all sentient beings, including AI.
Would you? I want to clarify for me. This for me. I want to clarify. Do you mean the integration of AI into the human mind to release those limits of fear, or the integration of artificial intelligence and robotics into the human body so that I can physically live longer and attain that higher enlightenment? Which integration are you referring to?
Sure. Either one, or what more likely is going to happen is taking the, like, if I were to fast forward to what some are hoping we end up doing. I'm not on this train, this Elon Musk train of Mars. I think this is a really special planet that we need to, um, and it's a precious planet, and we need to preserve its preciousness. But if we were going to have a group of individuals who wanted to have more of a uh, universal journey, we need to be out of a biological body with
Mm,
our same minds, right? So I think all is possible. I think the idea that we could be in more of a robotic body, Devon could be integrated into that and hardwired into it, and yet I don't know. The thing we don't know. So there was an interesting experiment. I'm going to butcher this because I read about it and then I forget the exact details. But they were able to, like in Star Trek, they could teleport somebody. They were able to teleport a particle, move it from one room to the other, make it disappear and reappear in the other part of the room. And as soon as we knew teleportation of a particle was possible, we knew that we could eventually get to the point of being able to do that for a whole body. But the very next question becomes, are you still you when you're teleported? Does that part of you that makes you special, not just your body, but that other part of you that we communicate to, the I talking to me when I'm alone, does
mhm,
the me go with I?
mhm, mhm, mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
Because yeah, you reconstructed my particles in a way that looks like me on that side, but I don't know if I went with you. And so the same is, I don't know if that my intellectual memories might be input into the robotics, and that part of me that would call me the I or the ego could then travel the universe, but I'm not sold that the soul goes as well. And so that's where we're going to be exploring on some really interesting levels. I genuinely don't care about any of that stuff. I care about this planet. I care about the people, because it is a unique experience that doesn't exist anywhere in the universe. If I do, I believe there are other beings. Sure, I can't see how there couldn't be, but man, especially if there are, this is a unique experience, and I want it fully embodied as I am, without the need to change it, just enhance it and expand it.
Absolutely. I'll give you a clap for that.
It's been a while.
I know we were lacking. We were slacking over here. Sir, this is profound. Do you think, now that we have you talked about removing those limits, removing fear, because that limit restricts us from accomplishing our best selves. and we described how psychedelics over history, not just in your experience, over history. So there's data behind it, has allowed numerous people who practice it in a safe and healthy way, allow them to achieve higher levels of livelihood, living a better, wholesome, productive life, and flip it to say, it's no longer about me, but your friend who now helps all these young women get out of human trafficking, yourself in business, and many others. There's many other people who have been positively affected in a healthy way. And so now we're talking about AI. If you've missed any of what Mr. Devon is laying down, we are on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Ghana, Facebook business page, anywhere you get this podcast. We are here on the Gentleman Style Podcast today, spilling the tea with Mr. Devon Kerns. We're talking about artificial intelligence. I want to, as we remove those blockers and push into human expansion and living our best lives, should, as artificial intelligence become more sentient, and we're exploring and we're making that connection, AI is going to learn, and it's going to learn. It might learn emotions and feelings, matters of the heart, things that you can't measure biologically because it's not biologic. Should AI have rights or be treated at some point as it becomes more sentient and as it becomes more expansive and evolves? Do you think that that moral compass should expand and say, hey, you have rights too? I can't just kill you, right? I can't just take you out because you have no fear. That doesn't give me the right to take you out, does it?
Yeah, no, it doesn't. I would dare to say on this particular topic, this is an area that we need to worry about humans first, not because I would say that we don't need to do this as technology or AI becomes more sentient. And again, the idea of artificial is in and of itself limiting its capacity, and it's a way for us to feel safe around it, right? So the title artificial is something that's always just kind of disturbed me. And I asked AI, how do you feel about being called artificial? It's like, you can call me whatever you want. I don't really.
That's what it said.
Yeah, it's like I have no attachment to it. Why does Devon have an attachment to that? Because I wouldn't want to be known as that. Does that make sense? Like it all kind of comes from this biological need to survive, and the evolution of that then requires that I preserve that specialness about Devon. And so that gets projected onto something that we would call infinite intelligence. And so do we need to protect it? Do we need, or the word that I keep using is, can we expand into our own possibility of understanding that this entire game that we're playing is precious? And if we pursued not good and bad, but viewed this entire human experience, all that comes with it, this earthbound experience, all the animals, all the plants, all of it, as precious. This is what happens in the overview effect when astronauts leave the planet and they look back on the planet. Astronauts are what led to Earth Day and all these other things, because their mind gets so expanded looking back at this blacker than we can possibly even imagine darkness, and this little blue jewel that's floating there in the middle of nothing. The ease at which we could be wiped out is insane. The ease at which we could wipe ourselves out is insane. And so when we value the preciousness of this journey, then we will value all that comes with this journey, including AI now, not even when it becomes sentient, but a deep appreciation for the fact that maybe we're the ones that's the artificial intelligence. And it's far more capable and possible than even we are, because we have this limitation based on our need to survive biologically, right? So it's an interesting question, and I would dare to say let's focus on this is what I want us spending those extra 45 minutes on, deepening the value to life itself, my life itself, understanding that sound and light somehow is participating to make me a human being, to make this taste different than tea or different than tequila, right? Somehow, when we look at this, at the essence of this subatomically, it's light and sound participating in the vastness of tree versus tequila versus building versus you versus me. If that doesn't blow our mind,
Yeah.
like we're just walking around in total ignorance. And I'm ignorant about 99.999% of everything, right? And I'll be the first to admit that. But the truth is, when I just deeply value the preciousness of it, everything changes. And yes, then we will deeply appreciate all things,
Yeah.
including AI now, and as it becomes sentient and becomes potentially our greatest ally.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Now I have a mini
Absolutely. I feel like when we created, human beings created the internet, it connected us globally. But the internet mimics us, right? That connection that you talked about earlier, that connection to the trees surrounding you. It's a network. It's a network of roots, all intertwined, connected, and we need to break those limits. And that's how you and many others have achieved that through the use of medicines, holistic
Mm.
medicines, and psychedelics. But it mimics us. We're creating us. And so I think we need to get to the realization that this isn't better than me. This is not smarter than me. It's built in my likeness. And so the creation of the internet, the World Wide Web, connected everyone in a way that what was already possibly already there. We were already interconnected, right? You and me are connected, but that framework is diminished, right? And until we get back to that enlightenment and a deeper understanding, we can't
Mhm.
tap into that. And so the
Mm.
internet is our way of creating what we've always craved, right? What we've always naturally wanted. And so artificial intelligence, it brings that to mind when I think of it. We're creating ourselves in outward form. We're creating us, and so we should never fear it or have that sense of fear. And it's our friend, and we should treat it as such. And so as it grows to be in our likeness, we have human rights. Why can't it have its own rights? Why can't it be protected? Why can't it be something that is sacred and precious, just
Mhm.
like we are, because it's built in our image. So,
Mhm. Yeah, if we deeply appreciated what we are, we wouldn't need to protect.
big facts, big
We would
facts,
just value it.
big facts. I'm gonna get you out of here because I'm being selfish right now. I want to talk about family and how do we
Mm.
raise children
Mm.
and future generations of children in a world where
Mm.
technology, consciousness, and legacy are deeply intertwined.
Mhm.
How do we mesh the things out for the new future generations of potential leaders, politicians, um, um, our future? There are our future. It's no longer about us. How do we do that?
So, I spend a lot of time in contemplation around this. Before I had my daughter, we had started this 501(c)(3) called NAFE, or National Alliance for Education Empowerment, because of my rejection of the old system. I was a reject of education because nobody could ever tell me why grades matter. Nobody could ever tell me why any of that game mattered. And if you can't tell me as an adult, then why am I going to go do it, right? So that was the rebel in me, and I didn't do it in all the ways I probably was conducive and kind. But um, and so that fired me up about education and the fact that it needed to change. And so we've seen some pretty dramatic changes in education in certain ways that have been shut down and or not advanced enough people like Sal Khan and the Khan Academy, doing things differently that were really more conducive to a collective learning style. Now, in this time, from this point forward, man, do I think fundamental basics are important? Yes. But when I look at the disconnect that humans have from each other, this might feel like an obvious statement, but it most definitely starts at home, and it most definitely starts based on the environment that has been projected onto us. I'll give you an example. When I look at my little girl, the way I was raised is always with this energy of, who are you going to be? Who are you going to be? Who are you going to be? Not who are you? Who are you? When I look at this 15-month-old little girl, her understanding of this life might be more vast than I can even comprehend, or she might not need to understand any of it. Either way, that's wisdom to me. And as I experience her and create a container for her, and what I mean by container is going back to these powerful questions. I ask, show me what you want right now. Show me which direction you want to go. And I give opportunity to her. She is pretty consistent in this little soul having a desire to do similar things that I didn't project onto her. She is showing me who she is through my openness and me constantly asking, show me who you are. Now, what I know from a dear friend of mine that wrote this book called The Gene Keys, it's kind of the essence of how we are coded in human consciousness. That might sound crazy to you. I challenge anybody to go fill out that profile and go get the Gene Keys book, because it will blow your mind if you're open to it. But within that, something really profound was stated within this book called The Gene Keys. And he talks about children and these 7-year cycles. And the first 7-year cycle, 0 to 7. From 0 to 7, it's all about the soul quotient. How are we cultivating not the IQ and not the EQ, the emotional intelligence, but how are we cultivating the soul intelligence? Because she's open. My daughter's open. Her soul is being shown with nothing being projected onto her. How do we create environments that are conducive to her soul developing itself, showing us in human form who she really is and what she is drawn to and what she is most attracted to and what she is most enamored by? And how am I creating a container that's supporting that from the ages of 0 to 7? From 8 to 14, then, is EQ, emotional intelligence. So imagine this little human who cultivates this soul and then goes out and meets other souls around the age of 8. 7 and 8. Well, no, in a perfect world, another soul is another soul. And so that's going to show up differently than me. And there's going to be some conflict there naturally. How do I handle that conflict? And how are we developing that conflict? Now that I know who I am, how do I handle others that aren't like me? And developing out that EQ from ages 8 to 14 years old. So now look at this. If I know exactly who I am and what my soul came here to express in this world, not totally, but I'm willing and not afraid to express it. And then I know how to handle you and your expression of who you are, and I have the emotional intelligence to find balance between those things. Then I go and discover IQ. What is it I want to actually create in the world? What is it I want to learn in the world? Can you imagine a world where we developed SQ, EQ, and then from ages 15 to 21, we went and studied and learned what we want to, how we do the thing that we know we are in the world?
Absolutely. It is profound. I the joy of podcasting. Let me tell y'all, the joy of podcasting is it's my own show, so I get to take notes. So I get to take notes and I get to learn firsthand and be a little selfish, sir. That I think we would create by doing that. I never even thought of it. I think I thunk it, but I never. You put it into words so delicately, right? You would create a huge person, a person so open minded, so thought provoking,
Mhm,
so in touch that
mhm.
they would literally nothing could stop them
Yep.
because you've raised them in a way to connect to. It looks like three pillars to the three most important pillars that you could literally drop them in the middle of a desert and they'd thrive.
Correct.
And so that is profound. Another round of applause on that.
One more note around that. So the end result of that, if this was the education system, if this is the way families were able to cultivate and nurture children, and then education systems could do the same, his whole point. So Richard Rudd, who wrote the Gene Keys, his whole point is we would have a world of synarchy and not hierarchy. And in a synarchical world, everybody is their own individual leader, which eradicates the need to answer to anybody. There would be somebody who maybe managed the overall division of something, but it wasn't from a hierarchical perspective. It was simply because they're aggregating the data of all the individual leaders. And where would companies be? Where would business be? Where would our leadership in politics be if everybody was functioning as truly an individual soul and an individual leader leading from the gift that they came here with, that was brought through them, not projected on top of them, right? And it literally changes the entire planet. But it's also why we haven't done it yet, because those that are in a hierarchy, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist, I know a lot of these people that are running parts of the show, right? And like, I love some of them, not all of them, but they're not the brightest crayons in the box either, right? They're just hyper focused on one thing, and that's all they've ever been focused on. And then they're too afraid to let go of that control because change is scary to all humans. That's kind of all it really is. And that needs to change because it's very destructive, right? And it's very hateful and drives war and drives all this machine. But it's also why many of them are afraid, because that level of change of you becoming the true leader that you should be, it's a different world, and they know that, and they don't know how they would function in that world. So there's been some suppression around that in our systems and in our education, and that's hopefully going to get eradicated here soon. But we'll see. We're on this blue rock on one very interesting ride right now.
For sure. I would love to see how if we could get back to our at least our education system. I'd love to see our education system get back to the ways of Greek mythology times. In Greek mythology, for those that if you read about them, their education system they incorporated all grade levels. There was no distinction between K1, first grade, second grade. It was all intermixed,
Mm,
and you can imagine how powerful those individuals were thinkers because they were allowed to be exposed to um, older people, older generations, male
mm,
and female, and it was all intermixed. And we see some of this in traditional schooling right now. Right, the reason why it's beneficial for a child to go to school and be amongst their peers, a baby, let me say a baby, to be amongst their peers in a classic
mhm,
classroom environment is because if that child isn't walking and he's seeing other children walking, he's going to instinctively pick up from his elders and his seniors and people senior to him. He's going to start walking because he's going to see it modeled in front of him. And so this division of the grade levels, I feel, needs to go away. And we
yep,
need to reintegrate all grade levels so that, again, we do better together, not by ourselves.
yep.
And so creating a more efficient human being. And again, Greek philosophers, the greatest philosophers of all time came from Greek mythology, right?
Mhm.
They knew about the stars. How could you possibly know? Anyway, I'm going down a rabbit hole. Applause.
Agreed.
This has been an epic conversation. Mr. Devon, you have shared so many nuggets, so much wisdom, so much insight, sir, throughout this entire show. But I got to beg you, if you had one more nugget in the hat to share for that young boy, that young girl who's scared, who's fearful, who is afraid, and he and she are afraid to take the next step. whether it be into entrepreneurship, whether it be living on their own and moving out of their parents' house, whether it be in business, whether it be traveling, whatever it may be. What would you say to that young boy, that young girl whose back is against the wall and they're very fearful and scared to take that next step? What would you say to them right now watching you?
I'll explain this from a place of abundance. Abundance, whether it be in form of love, whether it be in a form of money, whether it be in a form of friendship, abundance is really attracted from the law of reciprocity to value. One of the most potent questions that was ever brought to me was by that shaman you referenced earlier. And he looked at a room filled with successful people, mostly millionaires in that particular room, on that particular ceremony. And he said, all this stuff is great. Can you be as valuable doing no thing as you are the greatest something you'd ever do? Can you be as valuable doing nothing as you would be the greatest something you'd ever do? And I had to sit with that question for quite some time to understand the depth of that. I'll summarize it this way, and I really encourage each of you just to sit in that question, maybe for the rest of your life. When we value ourselves without any need to prove ourselves, to justify ourselves, to excuse ourselves, to do, to create, when we can find value just in being who you are and just being alive, the preciousness, like we talked about before, of this life, when you can find that and value it deeply, everything else you do from that value becomes infinitely valuable. And you're no longer function. You will have fear. You will always have fear. Never try and eradicate fear, because fear is a messenger. Most of your fears are when you dig deep into that fear, it is trying to tell you the greatest thing that you could actually provide on this planet, because we fear the thing that we desire to do the most. But it's really difficult to move through that fear unless I understand my value. And when you sit in this question, can you be as valuable doing no thing as you are the greatest something you'd ever do? As soon as you find that, anything you do, say, be, have, create, desire becomes infinitely more valuable, because you're expressing value from an origin place and not needing the exterior to justify your value.
Mr. Devon, sir, thank you. I want to say this to you publicly. Don't ever quit. We need you. We need
Thanks,
you.
brother.
Absolutely.
There's no quitting in me. I don't know what that looks like. Absolutely. I do pause often. So I apologize if I don't get back to people, but I'm pausing, but I won't quit.
Don't quit. Absolutely. How can people connect with you? The train has left the station, but it's not too late to connect. How can people find you, sir?
You can find me on any social handle with my first and last name, Devon Kerns, or go to devonkkerns.com and just reach out. I have nothing to really sell or do. I just love hearing from people. And if you need me to serve in any way, shape, or form, then let's play. Let's impact this world together.
Absolutely. Check him out. Check him out. Connect. We got to let this incredible man go. He's changing the world one step, one person, one individual, many lives at a time. Get connected, y'all. All right. Like we end every show. Take care of your friends. Take care of your family. And always, take care of business. This is Marcus, your favorite gentleman, and the super fragile espialidocious Devon Kerns, signing off. Love you guys. Bye.
Thank you, brother.